because it takes a lot of work, because we are in the startup.
Yeah, I remember that story. I remind myself of that story that you just told about that gentleman and the four girls that left with him. Like, I remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times we've had that. We had the relationship, the dating talk, I think probably 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And I don't think we've had it since because I think something might have clicked.
Well, I felt like you
But
bought in, right? I even asked you. I was like, "Hey, dude, are you bought in? Right? Is this what you're gonna do?"
mhm.
Right?
And
I
I'll
mean,
be honest,
I ask you
I,
that often.
yeah, and the one thing I respect too is, I mean, I, I listened to it, I think, on Andy Frisella's podcast with the whole hiring or going into partnership with friends thing. Like, where's that written that you should never do that? Like, it's I don't, it's not like you can't find it where it's a clear cut rule not to do it. It's all risk and reward. And when you looked at me, you said, what those things were, and it's like, hey, and to be honest, like, you
It,
I was the worker bee, like the B player or whatever in the beginning. I'm not a fully 100% A player, and I admit that.
mm-mm.
But the thing is I
That,
have the
right?
desire,
Yeah.
you
So
know
there's
I,
something on that, right? Like, so I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. You tell me to shut up.
now all I was going to say to finish that was I have the desire to go from B to A. And I think that you see that, and that's why you haven't been like, "Hey, Kevin, like, this ain't working out."
Yeah.
As frustrating as it can be sometimes, because I can be frustrating, and I'm not good at communicating and stuff like that. And I mean, you've come out, and you know, I've recognized and um, said it in the other episodes where it's like, you've come out to me, and this is what makes you a good leader, in my opinion, in my experience, is you want me to get the work done because you see that I can do it and I have certain things that I offer. At the same time, you acknowledged me the other day. It was like, hey, I know you're going through a rough situation with your wife and all the medical stuff. Like, we love you guys. Let us know if you need anything. If I hadn't bought in before, that was when I 110% bought in, because I don't want to work with somebody who's not going to try to understand that kind of stuff. And you don't have to understand it to like 100%. I don't give a shit if you know
Yeah.
the conditions my wife goes through. But like, we had the other talk too, where it's like the culture you're developing. Like yesterday, dude, I finally went downstairs to my garage 40 feet below me and lifted yesterday for an hour. Like, yeah, I know. Dude, I did. I sat on the couch, and I know we're getting away from the thing, but I believe taking care of yourself and the health part, the four pillars that Empowered Homefront, stands or is built on, with the health, wealth, relationships, and faith. I think an A player in Empowered Homefront has to fulfill each of those pillars. And
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that. And I sat on the couch yesterday, and guess what I was doing? I was playing with my son, and whenever he scrambled away, I picked up my phone and I went through flipping through my phone, and then I went, "What am I doing?" And I don't know what it was. I think I saw somebody lifting on Instagram or whatever. And I was like, why am I not doing that right now? And I went in there and I just said, I don't care what I do in here today. Just get it done. Like,
Yeah.
I knew the task at hand was to lift. So, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that you also build too, is you, when these girls come into the Discord where we have our like chat and stuff like that, and they go, "Hey, I'm going to be later. Hey, like, I need to do this for my son." You're like, "Okay, go ahead and take care of that. Let me know if you need anything." You say that 99% of the time. Do you
Mm.
need anything? Let me know if we can help. And that right there, I think, is the part of how you develop A players. Because if these girls, I don't know how long they've been around. I think most of the two core people that are in here.
It was almost a year.
Yeah, so I think that they were around when old boy and the other four left.
Yep.
So the reason that they stick around is because they admire and they accept and they desire the environment and the culture that you've created, because, you know, you were open with them. They know how much those other girls get paid. If
Mm.
they wanted to, they could have left.
Yep.
But the culture that you created in TLC, Deal Boss Project, and even here that, we're developing an empowered home front is, if you don't like it, go. But
Mm.
this is how we're going to develop you. We know it works because we've had people that could have left and taken more money, but they stayed because they liked the culture instead.
Yeah, and
And I think
I tell the girls that too, man. I tell all the team, like, look, like if you're not in it. Matter of fact, we just lost one a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and you was there for that, and I knew it
Yeah.
was coming, right? And like 3 weeks from whenever I sensed it, and what happens? What happens is environment changes. All right, so there's two environments that you're always battling with. There's the work, and then there's the personal.
Mhm.
And me and you, Kevin, like in the FAA, like they tell you, like, hey, or not them. We had a good supervisor who told us, like, hey, when you come through that door, you leave all your personal stuff at home, right? Don't be bringing all that into work, and that is true. But it doesn't mean your employer, your leader, your supervisor shouldn't care about you, shouldn't check in on you, shouldn't you should be able to have an environment, right, where people do care, and that's what we try to create. But also what I create is an open door policy where when people are having issues, it's just like, hey, I don't know if you're fully bought into this vision because this that we're doing is going to be massive, it's going to be huge, and you might not be a good fit right now, right? And I had that conversation twice before, last one left. And when she left, dude, this is the thing that's always blown me away. Every time I have a girl leave, they send me this massive letter thanking me for all of the education and lessons that they've learned. And they know that whenever they get their stuff figured out, that they can go somewhere else and get paid more.
Hmm.
They right? Because I'm developing people and turning them into skills, right? So it's one thing. And another thing on my hiring is I tell people in the interview process, like, and the interview process isn't an interview, instead series of tasks, and then it has a video for them to watch. Me telling them what the culture is and what my expectations is, and one of my expectations is if you're going to show up just to get a paycheck, I want to let you know that you do not get paid for the first 2 weeks, and if you don't complete training in those first 2 weeks, you don't get paid at all. Your payment is the education that I am giving you. Now, if you're accepted and you're brought onto this team, I will pay you for those 2 weeks. Right. And that right there disqualifies all of my knucklehead C players. Every one of them. They'll show up for 1, 2, 3 days. But then after they figure out how intense the training is, then they don't do it. And it only takes, like, we got our training dialed into like 2 days, 2.5 days, and then it's on the job training. And the on the job training is pretty much where every one of them gets, they end up just disqualifying themselves, which is amazing,
They
right?
can't execute.
Yeah, they can't execute, and they know they can't execute. And what's so great about it, and this is where I'm talking about environment. What's so great about it is the rest of the team will tell that person, "Hey, we don't think you're a good fit," and they'll leave every time.
So what I'm hearing from that seems like you have a pretty good onboarding process for
Yeah.
these people. Um, Now I can't think if we've discussed this in it, but we can retouch on it anyway. Um, do you think that with developing and picking out these A B players, why some businesses go down or some, besides developing a culture, do you think people who are in those positions of onboarding or hiring, they themselves can't define what a ABC player is because they're not an A player themselves?
100%.
And also with that, do you think, granted, I'm on board with you with what an A player is, 100%. I'm pretty sure we both have the same understanding of what an A player is in this culture that we have here. Do you think there's different personal standards of what an A player, B player, C player is?
So
Un- Unfortunately, do you think that there is,
Yeah, so there's definitely standards, and this is where leadership comes into play, right? Because I actually battled with this with you, and like I talked to you about it a little bit yesterday. You know, we had a little powwow, and
Mm-hmm.
pointing out is my expectations for you is way higher than your own expectations for yourself, and I know that, but I can't just come out and tell you, "Hey, I need you here," and you're down here, because then it's going to create massive overwhelm, because the messages that I'm giving you, the projects that I'm giving you, they're bite-sized chunks, you know? And then you're skill stacking, right? So you're coming in, you never done any of this stuff before, right? Like all of this is brand new. And if I told you, "Hey, go figure all this out," then you're overwhelmed, right? You're not going to show back up. You're going to be like, "I can't do this. I'm done."
Yeah, and the one thing that you do that I think can be done across the board, just generalized, is the one thing that you do is your communications skills with your team has gotten better and better and better from day one. And I've been here for, I think September will be a year or something, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, I'll give praise when praise is due, man. Like, um, but I don't say, but um, the one thing with the communication is the Loom videos, and you to develop your B players into A players. What you just said is 100% true. You will say, "Hey, here's a workflow," an automation. Say, we'll use workflows for example. You break it down just enough to where you teach us what it is, but you still leave stuff out for when you go, "Hey, build a workflow just like this, mimic this, and then I want you to give me feedback and tell me what you understand." I think with every task and educational video you loom out to us, you always say, "Hey," and you've actually like gotten into people's asses about it as kindly as you can, you know, "Hey, why are you not commenting in here that you've watched it, at least at the very least? Why have you not unassigning yourself so I see that you've taken yourself off this task?"
Yep.
And you want me, and you're trying to develop me into a partial leader of it because you see that A player in me.
No, I'm developing you into a leader, bro. Like you're already a leader. You're just not a leader here,
Oh,
right? Like you're already a leader, right? I mean, you're a leader in your family. You're a leader other places in your life, right? It's just
mhm.
here in this environment, right? In Deal Boss community environment project, like the vision we have, there's skills that you have to learn and develop in order to be a leader. And then the next thing is essentially this is
Oh,
this
let me pause you for a second.
yeah.
Do you think the next step above A player is leader?
No, it's all the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all the same because me, yes, I'm a leader. Yes, I'm the owner. Yes, I'm the employer. I'm all these things. But if I put myself up on a pedestal and I'm not able to take out the trash, that doesn't make me a leader. That makes me an asshole. Right?
Yeah.
Like, no, dude, you got to be able to be willing to do it all. And that's the difference between an entrepreneur and somebody who wants to play entrepreneur. And right. And I had that talk with you because whenever
Mhm.
you first came in here, I picked up a lot of Kevin wants to do his own thing. Kevin wants something of his own. And you still struggle with this every once in a while, which is fine because it's your creativity and you're starting to redirect that to be in line with what we're building, which is the Empowered Homefront thing, which is great. Right.
I've
So
never had a partnership, and I think that when I look at it and you saying that now, I don't think I knew how to work with people to share a vision.
skill set,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? You had to learn that skill. Not only did you have to learn that skill, you had to develop trust in me to.
Mhm.
And then we had this talk too. And it's like, hey, man, we're friends. But listen, here, like, I need you to be okay looking up to me because every time I give you instruction or tell you something that I know you don't know, you kind of just downplay it as like, oh, yeah, like that's great. But like, I don't really want to accept feedback from you, right? Because it's weird because you're my friend. And I'm like, that has to stop. Right. And I kind of had that talk with you in different language, but like essentially that's what it was. Because again, earlier you asked, well, why can't friends work together? Well, that's one of the things. Who has more skills? Do they all have different skills? Right. So, like me, I've got more business skills than you. And because of that, I am up here and you're down here learning, and you have to be okay looking up. Why does marriages not work out in business? Because they consider themselves to be equals, but they're not. And it's that this is called ego, right? Or humility. Your ego outplays it, outweighs it, and it prevents growth. So even you started doing this thing where you saw me putting out Loom videos, and then you started putting out Loom videos, right? And I was just like, all right, great, you know. And then instead of telling you like, hey, you're wasting the time of the team putting out these Loom videos, instead of telling you stuff like this, instead I supported it, right? Because I knew if I didn't support it, then it would shut you down in even trying to become a leader.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that, because when I asked you if an A player evolves into a leader, paired with that question that you already answered, do you like? I'm sure you know this, but for the people listening, like listeners, audience, you have no idea how hesitant I was to create that, because I discovered something where I was like, hey, I value this as important because it was a mistake I made. I don't want other people making this mistake. And every single time that I went to Eric about it, Eric was like, dude, just do it. Use common sense to know if it's something valuable or not. Like, what's one thing I came up with was
The
I have
copy the little task. That was really,
yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that. You taught me that. And then not only did you teach me that, but I turned around, I was like, oh, dude, like I didn't know this. And I put it out there for the entire team to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that stuff on purpose, right? Like it's not by an accident, because I seriously didn't know that. And then I seriously wanted to praise you and position you in a different way. And I think that's where like that humility and that ego comes in, because people are so afraid of being wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, if you just look at it as, I just learned something else. Every day you should grow to learn something else. If you don't learn something every day, you are not growing. And if you're not growing, you're dying. So like in a team, even Arlene or Arlene, like anybody, dude, it doesn't matter. Like even if they show me something that I already knew and I didn't take away anything, I'll still praise them as though I never saw it before. Right? Because it gives them that feeling of entitlement, that feeling of worth. And earlier when you was talking about the dark side and positive side of encouragement, that's the big difference. And that's one thing I had to beat out of me, and I'm still working on. I'm struggling with it. Like trying to be assertive without beating somebody down, because like in the military, that's what you do, right? In the FAA, that's what you do, right? That was the environment. It doesn't mean it's right. Like Jocko, right? Like Jocko Willing, dude, great leader, great military leader. He's wrote two of the best leadership books ever. And when you listen to him lead, he doesn't lead trying to humiliate somebody. He leads from a point of, tell me what you think,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then
Yeah.
he guides and he plants seeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one thing. So like what you were getting at, I mean, this everything comes full circle with what we do here, the DLER model.
Mhm.
So if you like with the girls, like, or even me, like say anybody on the team comes to you and says, hey, like, look at this, I found this, like, it makes it easier for me to complete this task. And you're like, oh shit, I already knew that. If you would say like, okay, yeah, that's fine, like, most of us already knew that, or I already knew that, that squashes them wanting to ever fulfill that first step of discovering. Because
Yeah.
if they're just like, F it, screw it, like if he's just gonna beat me up, like I found something that makes my life easier to be more efficient in the company, in the business, getting this stuff done. And my leader is telling me like, yeah, okay, I already knew that. Why am I going to put in the extra effort?
Yep. And that's what happens with marriages, where we talk about, are you being on the same team or are you being in competition?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because immediately the husband comes home and wants to share this big idea, and the wife's like, yeah, you didn't know that? I literally just had this talk the other day. And I'm like, every time we do that, like, just even if it's just a little bit, we're making the other person feel stupid.
Dude, I am so guilty of doing that. Like, I want my wife to be, and she's an A player in different aspects of the marriage, and I'm a B player in the aspects that like, and we constantly try to find that where we're growing together to be A players on the same team. And dude, I am so guilty, so guilty when she discovers something so little and she's so proud, and I'm just like,
Dude,
what? I'm so bad at it.
you got to figure out how to bite your tongue, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
Mm-hmm.
right, like I practice this too, because this was so hard for me, and this is one thing that helped me overcome exactly what you're talking about, because I realized, a couple of years ago, how much of a negative person I was. And my environment of growing up to become a man was very toxic, right? A lot of picking on and bullying and all this stuff. And I think all that stuff's great. Like, I don't really actually see a problem with bullying or picking on somebody if it's in the right circumstance. Like, if you're like picking on somebody, bullying somebody because you want to hurt them, that's wrong. Like, again, far left, far right, somewhere in the middle is where we need to be. All right. So, but if it's because I like you, Kevin, and I'm going to make fun of your beard because I can't see your upper lip, I'm picking on you, but me and you
Like,
can laugh about it.
yeah,
Right.
I call that friendly banner, man.
But I mean, that's picking on each other, as bullying, because I'm making fun of you.
Yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
and my point with that is like, whenever it comes to like husband and wife, dude, you're literally married. So like, somehow we think we're on the same playing field. But when it comes to cleaning the house and cooking and buying groceries, dude, I walk into a grocery store, I'm lost. Absolutely lost. I have nowhere to go. The only thing I know is all the healthy stuff is on the outside aisles. That's all I know. Right. And like with Lori, she's way up here with that. I'll never be able to outdo her, nor do I want to, nor do I care to. That's her lane. Right. And when she comes home and she tells me something about, like, right now, I actually experienced this, right? Because I got so many years and so much knowledge in health and nutrition and bodybuilding and fitness and all this other stuff. Well, now she's starting to understand and learn all this stuff that I learned 8 years ago. And she's coming in, she's talking about GMO products, she's talking about sunflower oil and all of the foods, and she's talking about, the difference between organic and non-organic, and the poisons and the toxins that's in it, how bad fructose is to you, like all this stuff that I'm just like, yeah, like, I knew that long time ago. Like, I've been trying to bring all that into the family. That a way we can do it. Like, all those times I yelled at you because you was feeding the kids these little gummy packets that said organic, and I was like, they're still not healthy. They're freaking gummies, right? Like, feed them food. Like, all those time, like, this is what I was trying to tell you. And she's like, but I learned this, and I'm like, why couldn't you fucking learned it years ago? But now that Sally, this other lady, told her, all of a sudden she's like, my mind is blown. Like, fructose is Satan. you know?
Yeah.
And, it's that same struggle, dude. It's just like, do I tell her that I already knew that? And the answer is no. Instead, I tell her, oh, that's amazing. Like, what are we going to do? And that's what I do.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think I try to practice it, and it sucks is because I'm almost at that point where I'm aware of what I'm about to do. Like, I'm at the point where I do it and I immediately recognize what I do it. I'm like getting over that hump of becoming aware before I open my big fat mouth where my upper lip is hidden because of my stupid beard. And 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 does it hinders that discovery because, I won't get into it because, we'll start wrapping it up here. But I think oh my Lord, I was wondering what the sound was outside the window. Like, apparently it's gusting like 50 knots outside today over here.
We can't hear anything through the mic though.
Yeah, good. Um, but yeah, I think the first step is if you to negative to taking a B player or an A player to back to a B player, and not even developing a B player and an A player, is if you squash their discovery. Because if
That's a really good point, man. That's a really good takeaway you got. I mean, you did that on your own. Like that's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Dad.
Yeah. I mean, this really is because I didn't recognize that. It's just like, huh?
Yeah,
Discover.
I mean, I think about it as, I don't mean this as a demeaning to anybody at all, but from a leadership perspective, when you take on that role, one thing I discovered going back to the military things was, okay, these are my kids. I heard my old crew boss say it. She goes, "You all are my kids, and I'm your mom." And I was like, "What? Like, you're not my mom?" But what she meant is like, you know, what I took away from it and what I've learned from experience with it is that she used that metaphor in her head as like we're her kids because she didn't want to micromanage us and she wanted us to explore and discover that if you put your hand on the stove, you're going to burn your hand because it's hot
Yeah.
type thing. And I like to bring that into it as well. Um, and I try to treat myself like that sometimes too. It's like, dude, you don't know everything. I used to be a very big know-it-all. My wife calls me out on it sometimes. I'm just like, and that's where it comes. She only
Yeah.
calls me out on. She calls me out on it whenever I say like, "Oh, you didn't know that about GMOs or something." Like the same thing.
Yeah, dude, that's the worst thing you can do is correct people when it doesn't matter. And like, some of those previous episodes where I talk about, lose some battles in order to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is the quickest way to lose the battle and lose the war. Just correct
Yeah,
somebody.
I'm gonna butcher the story, but you know where it's coming from, and I
I don't want
think it's from.
to.
Is it the where they're at the party and there's three people talking and they have the quote and doesn't he say that he says that Jesus says it, but it was actually Shakespeare or something that said the quote, and he's like, "What do you gain from correcting him?"
Yeah, it was one of the phases, right? And like these guys are standing around in a circle, and the guy who's hosting the party, right,
Mhm. That's
is
important.
that's important. The guy who's hosting this party, like it's his party, is sharing this thing, this phrase, and he's saying that it's a quote from like one of the two, right, Shakespeare, and then another guy's like, no, that's from the Bible, and he's telling him that he's wrong, and then he looks at an expert in like Shakespeare, and he says, hey, you're an expert at Shakespeare. Isn't that quote from the Bible? And the guy's like, no, I don't think so. And then the host of the party walks away, and the guy who's trying to correct him asks the expert, and he's like, hey, you know that quote was from Shakespeare. Why didn't you tell him he's wrong? And the guy goes, what would I have gained by humiliating him in front of everybody at his own party? Why would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Be right? Why?
Yeah,
You know? Dude, that's such a great story, dude. It's
I
just like,
know. I know. I knew you would like if I mentioned
dude.
that. Dude, it's
I was
crazy,
thinking
man.
I was thinking it, yeah.
Yeah, I know we're going off, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. But that I love self-help books, business books, whatever you're reading, nonfiction, whatever nonfiction book you're reading. I love being able to share stories like that with stuff you learn because then that proves that I'm actually retaining the knowledge and the lessons and implementing them.
Yeah. Dude, Kaylee just finished Grit by Angela Duckworth.
I have seen that book. I have not read it though.
Have you not? Dude, it's
No,
amazing. Yeah, amazing book. And now I got her reading How to Ask Questions the Sandler Way.
I don't know that one either.
Yeah, she loves it.
Dude, I'll tell you what though, man, like that mental toughness book is pretty sweet.
Yeah,
It's honestly written like a 5-year-old could read it.
yeah.
It's really good. But
All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up. So, in the words of Dragon Ball Z, until next time on Empowered Homefront.
well, next time on Empowered Homefront, we'll be talking about Eric's chest hair. Nah, man. What do you? I mean, yeah. I guess next time on Empowered Homefront, yeah, tune in to watch Eric shave his beard. I don't know.
No?
Dude, if I shave, I know we're wrapping this. I've said let's wrap this up 4 or 5 times.